are now plugged in to Thinkering Media, where we are transforming the future of humanizing education. This is a place for Thinkering Minds.
Okay, as an educator, that would have made my year. Like, I had two kids almost get into a fist fight debating the topic I brought into class.
Let's crush it.
I'm so good.
Good morning, thinkers. Good morning, dreamers. Good morning, builders. Welcome to Thinkering Minds.
Thinkering minds, your ideas ignite. Thinkering minds, like the sparks take flight. Good morning, thinkers, the future's alive. Thinkering minds, where ideas rise. Good morning, thinkers, welcome inside. Thinkering minds, keep the spark alive.
Good morning, builders. Welcome to Thinkering Minds.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Thinkering Minds, where we explore the science and art of humanizing learning through the people who live it every day at Thinkering Collective. I'm your host, Jim. Today I'm excited to have the one and only Noa Daniel with us. Noa is an educator's educator. That's what I like to say. She's the founder and CEO of Building Outside the Blocks, co-founder of the Mentoree, a podcaster, a speaker, author, so many other things. But her work's all about bringing learning to life, joy to learning through personalization, student voice, educator empowerment, building outside the blocks, and creating classrooms where kids feel like they truly belong. Noa, thank you for having the time to come with us.
Oh, it's so my pleasure. And an intro like that is worth coming out for just there.
The attitude that you bring to everything with the joy and the smile. That's why it's always so much fun to connect with you. Was education always a part of your picture and plan, or what was the moment where you decided that was going to be the path you went down?
So when I was little, I used to pretend to be teacher and I would have spelling tests and give check marks. And that was kind of fun, but I actually thought I was going to be a social worker. And I went to school and I thought that my soul was not going to make it. But when I went to school and started taking social work classes, I had stopped tutoring, which was something I had done always because I did well in school and I loved learning. And I'm like, wow, something's missing from my life. And then I became like a youth group advisor. And I was like, oh, there's definitely something in this. And that's when I was like, I think I want to be a teacher. And then nobody was getting into the faculty of ed, and challenge accepted. I was like, dude, I'm going to get into the faculty of ed. And I did. And I was so lucky to get a job really early and to have wonderful mentors when I got there to help set me up for success.
That's, mentorship's key. And I guess that's what your positive mentorship experience probably is what drove you to build that out for other educators and at the Mentoree, and making sure that they have that kind of similar experience. So is that how the Mentoree came about?
I can speak about that, but a lot of people who come to the community come because they either had somebody that really helped them or they didn't and wished that they could be what they didn't have. For me, I had a really wonderful mentor who was the resource support in my classroom. And she kind of helped me see that every student has an independent education plan. You just have to find it for them and create it. It doesn't have to be formal. And that was huge for me, that I could find a way to create personalizing opportunities. And then I had a mentor that wasn't supposed to be given to me. Everybody that was new to this school got a mentor. And I was like, I want a mentor. And they're like, no, you've been teaching for a really long time and we brought you here. You don't need a mentor. And I'm like, but I'm new to the context. And I'd really like to, I was in an IB school. I said, I'd really, really like a mentor. And she changed my life because I didn't know I was doing anything different or original because teachers live in their classroom. So she was like, Noa, the students are talking about your projects in the hallway. What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, no, come on, tell me what it is. I'm like, I'm building outside the blocks. And she was like, what does that mean? And I said, I don't know. And every week for like 6 weeks, we would start to unpack. And it turned out I had an approach to teaching I didn't know I had. I created projects that all kind of had similar themes in that there was voice and choice for students before voice and choice was something we talked about. And for me, it's all about impact. So that students are talking about my projects is only half of the picture. My projects were impacting their sense of self. And I believe that because students spend so much time at school, it should be character building. It should help them become more reflective and have a deeper sense of themselves. So why not kind of imbue that in a project-based approach? So that's what I did. Yeah, mentorship is cool. I wanted to create that. Sorry, I forgot we were talking about mentorship and I got so into what I do. But the funny thing was I got invited onto On Ed Mentors, which became my podcast. But I was on the panel at the beginning and I was like, guys, we're mentoring pre-service teachers and we're learning so much about each other. We should totally do this. And like, you've met me, so they're like, okay, Noah, go ahead and do it. And I don't know if they just didn't know that I was going to because I said it. I really worked hard to create a space that people could come to, find mentorship, be able to share their successes, the things that they've developed, to be able to, I don't know, I really think that we can cultivate a mentorship mindset where people understand that there's human capacity that can be built through connection with other people and in informal ways and in informal ways. So when Evan said to me, I want you to build a mentorship program for Thinkering, I was like, this is exciting because for Thinkering, it's not just something that's a strategy. It's like a stance. Like if you're going to humanize learning, it has to be connecting educators through relationships that are rooted so beautifully in empathy and reflection and creativity and autonomy. So it really gels with everything that I believe about education.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about building outside the blocks, and immediately it just speaks to so much. But what does it mean to you personally?
So both personally and professionally, I accept and I need confines. I need a structure. Let me say that differently. I need a structure. It shouldn't be confining. So I need to know what the expectations are, but I don't need to be told the only ways to meet it. I want to meet students where they are, build a room around who's in the room, and kind of find these opportunities outside the box. So instead of checking a box, you build outside the blocks. You're like, okay, these are the things we have to achieve. How can we achieve this for you? How are we going to do it differently for you? How am I going to create an invitation to make you engage? Because dude, you're not at all ready. And you who always want to engage, I have to create space for you to be more communal oriented. So it's really about creating a framework for yourself where you're fine with meeting those expectations of standards and curriculum, but you have a way to do them in a much more creative and community oriented way.
What's the big takeaway when people get their hands on the process and they start to go through it? Is like
well, if it's teachers that are implementing it, it is empowerment and self-belief, but it's also belief in learners. Like when you first tell some teachers who are more classroom management control oriented teachers, they do not understand the idea that students can decide how they do something, when they do something, and what the why is behind what they do. But all the learning that happens, the learning skills, the curricular skills, the transferable skills happen not just from the project, but from kind of being a creative collaborator with them. So when you decenter the teacher, which a lot of people, it's difficult for, but I'm happy to hold their hand through it because, oh my gosh, what happens? You have a group of engaged learners who actually care, take ownership of what they're doing. So usually the sales pitch is in the impact, not in the how do you do it. So when I do a presentation on my approach, most teachers start with like one of my Bob projects, and they'll come back and say, I had no idea that students could like learn about their identity while also meeting these curricular skills. And that's when I said, and then it's not about me, right? It's about that teacher taking on the understanding that yes, there are fixed elements of education, but you don't have to live and die by them. You can be creative and you can still meet those expectations, and you can bring everybody in the room together to become a community. So it's usually in the doing more than the talking that really makes the difference for people.
what does it look like in the students when they take ownership of these projects?
One of my favorite parts about the ownership is when they come in and they look at my agenda and they go, this person's presenting their win today, their P3 today, they're, any one of my projects, because there are like 30 of them, but they're excited about other people's presentations because they're so invested in learning about people, because people are so excited. So this year, for example, What Lights You Up, which is like one of my so excited about this particular idea. The project itself is really about people saying something that they're great at. So imagine starting the school year and you're telling people that you're great at Rubik's Cubes, and you have a video of you solving like 7 or 8 different kinds of cubes, and you're sharing this with the class. But in sharing this with the class, you're building presentation skills, you're building organizational skills, you're building the idea to meet assignment criteria, and you're embodying the work. And in that, you're like, I am the vessel of this work. It's not some other curriculum. It's not some imposed thing. These are the expectations that students can present with confidence, that they have vocal skills, that they understand inference, and that they're doing this using something that is important to them. So students were presenting on things like BMXing or like being able to draw certain characters and learning how to develop their drawing style. So we're not just looking at the solution or the end product. We're looking at process. We're looking at the role of failure in building skill, because a student is much more likely going to throw a basketball a million times to try to learn how to make, a three-pointer, but they're less likely going to endure in school if they're finding difficulty. So we have to kind of match what leveling up looks like in the areas that really ground them and bring them joy. And then we can use that the whole rest of the year. Because I'm like, okay, remember when you were presenting this and you felt amazing? What is it that happened to you? And they tell you that who I am and what I value is important, and that's your vessel the rest of the year, because you built a relationship where you really see them, and you're not seeing them because they filled out a laundry list of answers. You see them because you give them an invitation to say, here's an opportunity to bring yourself in. And when they don't accept that invitation, that's an opportunity for you to find different ways to engage with them, or just to make them feel that it's okay to keep showing up. So it's a really cool way to see people.
I'm realizing the key to humanizing the learning experiences is students seeing themselves as a part of the curriculum, and that as a part of their story, not a separate thing that they have to endure through, but something that they get to the opportunity to shape, mold, and participate in. So that's like what you're doing there is just so unique, and it's giving back, authority to the learners and empowering the educators to not be bogged down by just the traditional way of doing things.
The challenge is, though, like when we don't look longitudinally, because when I tell people about a tribob, which is a 3-part building outside the blocks project that scaffolds over time, and you tell them like master storyteller, you're going to take them from reading a story to telling a story over 5 months. They're like, how does that look? I have a report card. I have a this. And you're like, no problem. In the first term report card, you can comment on the 1 and 2 part of the reading a story. And so you're looking at cadence and you're looking at vocalization. And then you evolve it to like telling a story where students can take an existing story and they can create puppets or they can create an animation. But then that's your first term. And then in your second term, as you explicitly teach the traits of writing, students are writing their own original story and presenting it in whatever medium. And you're taking them through a process over time where they revisit a skill and build on it. You're frozen. Do you know that? I'm here alone. So I'm going to talk to you as if you're here. Oh, yes. Teaching is a wonderful profession. Yeah, it's super hard. We need mentorship to get through it, not just to teach us how to do things, but to be co-creators and co-collaborators. The same way that I set up a classroom is how I set up mentorship, where there's agency and where opportunities foster well-being, because you show up whole and you have people around you that you amass as part of a mentorship network that you can go to lend your calm when you're not okay, to think about how am I going to unpack this? And you know that you have a thought partner somewhere. So, we've talked, Jim, you and I, about Strum and the Wild Turkeys, which is a children's book that came out 4 years ago. But when my sister was in South Africa, she had this Strum made for me. And this is one of my most treasured possessions because I love Strum as a character, but seeing him made out of beads is just really a treasure. I imagine a world where everybody can connect with Strum as an imperfect main character like we all are. But sometimes we write ourselves out of our own stories. So when we own our stories, that's when we can exercise voice and choice. And that's what Strum does. So I just thought I'd share that because I'm riffing it right now and I'm just talking. Yep. What else do you want to talk about? I'm going to stop this recording maybe, unless Jim is not going to come back. Let's see what he says to me. Jim, you coming back? Anyhow, I don't know what else you want to know about me. I just presented on agency mentoring and well-being for the International Mentoring Association. And for me, what was so exciting was the chance to present outside education. I'd never done that. And, educators have EduSpeak. And even though we come from different districts or different places and have language that is specifically related to our context, there's a lot of ubiquitous things in education. So when you go outside education and they're like, EduSpeak, I don't know what that is. So I really had to consciously, oh yeah, you're back. I just started talking. There's like a full monologue of me. I introduced my very favorite Strum character that my sister had made for me in South Africa. And I just kept talking the entire time, pretty much, Jim.
No, you did not.
Oh, I did.
Oh,
I know. Hey.
I'm so sorry, Noah. That's hilarious. I can't wait to go back and watch. Man, yeah, I'm good with the editing tool, so yeah, we don't have to worry about all that. Man, what were we talking about? Where did I leave you at?
Well, we were talking about my projects and how kids experience it. And I don't know where you want to go with this, so just ask me a
Yeah.
question.
Well, just next, the mentoree and mentorship and education. And I know you just got done speaking at a big conference. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I actually told you when you were gone, just so you know, but I just presented for the International Mentoring Association, which I joined a couple years ago. Dr. Ben Kutsi-Aruba, who edited the book that I contributed a chapter to, that I wrote with my team at the Mentoree, he said, Noah, you should really join IMA. So I was like, okay, I'll look into it. And I've been going to their virtual coffee sessions and to hear people outside education, which is nice because I live in an education and educator world. It's been really profound to understand what mentorship looks like in other places. And it gave me the kind of global lens where I said, I actually think I have something valuable. So when I wrote a proposal for this webinar that I did, I asked if it could be interactive. And they're like, well, it can be if you want, but webinars are usually non-participatory, but I thrive on participation. So it's not just the rush of having to manage the chat while you're presenting, although I like that too. I did actually, this is a separate thing. I've done like 200 people at one time doing Friday photo, like in the olden days, like last year, when Google still had the ability for us to collaborate, which it's not the same now because now you have to use like Mural or all these other Playground or all these other collaboration tools, Sandbox. But when it used to be that you could like put stickies on things, I would do that with 200 people at one time. And it was such a great rush. What was a rush about this was really challenging myself to speak to people outside education and to make ideas that I learned through the case study of the mentoree accessible to people who have jobs I don't understand or live in worlds with language I don't know. So trying to create something that was meaningful for people and hearing that it was is super powerful for me. And I want to do more of that, but it also helps me bring back to education things that I think are really, really valuable and what it means to be like relational, responsive, and radically human.
Radically human. That's what we want to free people up to be, is radically themselves and radically human. Do you think what's the big takeaway from being a mentor for so long? In my head, it's like the cool thing about great mentors is how they flatten hierarchies and like build a real relationship, an even relationship. What's the big thing that you've experienced, that unlock for mentorship that sets you apart? What's your special sauce?
I think the special sauce is always remembering that you can learn so much from a mentee. And it's not just about flattening the hierarchy, it's about really valuing learning. And just because you're new to something doesn't mean you don't have a breadth or a wealth of knowledge from something else. So always starting people that are mentees at step one is the least effective way to do it, and really getting the chance to know a mentee, getting relational. The ship part of mentorship is about relationships, right? So I think we don't spend enough time in mentoring relationships to cultivate the relationship, but it's most effective when you have a relationship built for you to utilize that as a mentee so that you can ask questions in a safe container, right? Like you don't want to be like, I don't know how to plan this lesson to some person that you don't know even has the same values as you as an educator. So, and sometimes your mentor, if they're given to you isn't a good fit. So understanding that, sometimes non-examples are really helpful and sometimes they're really difficult. So I feel that not only the relationship part of it, but that reciprocity piece is so essential to value learning and to accept people for where they are, their limitations, and still be able to learn from them. Those are learning skills that will take you everywhere in life.
Every time I think of like the next question I'm going to ask you, immediately like go into it before I get to it.
Like, sorry, not sorry. That's so cool. Not,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
Pairing up educators with mentors. How do you do that? How do you find the
So in the Mentoree work that we did when we were a community is we created opportunities for people to come into the community as mentors, mentees, or both, which is what I've always been. I have mentors and I am a mentor. So that's the first part. But the second part is I don't love pairing. I actually, in a perfect world, think that people should have the opportunity to choose who the people that they work with and feel safe with are. So in a perfect world, we would be able to look at not just the qualities, but kind of like the digital footprint of people and say, yeah, that's a person I really feel like I want to work with, or that person might challenge me in a way that I need to grow some capacity. So I really think that choice should be an essential part. As you know, I've been speaking as the architect of Thinkering Mentorship. I really think it's so cool that you're not just getting a mentor, you're also getting access to experts. So mentorship is a facilitation. It's not a singular relationship. And that's something I'm really excited about, that you might have been matched with somebody because they have a similar interest or they want to do a project or they're in a certain area because you're looking at like the context and it has to meet certain expectations for that district, but you're not confined to that relationship. And so the mentor, when they're effective, is like actually a whole bunch of people you might want to talk to. And that's when the agency of the mentee can be actualized. So the fellows that come in who bring their students these opportunities, like this is huge. This is it's really a building outside the blocks approach, because yes, there are all these things that every single board or district have to do. But if you have a Thinkering collective experience, then you can take those fixed things and you can still go beyond them, as that project can be driven by that student. That project can involve people all over the world, and you can make a difference while also building your own character and sense of self.
Wow. Wow. All right. I love it. What are you seeing teachers most hungry for right now?
Well, right now, teachers are hungry for sanity. They're hungry to have less students in a classroom and to have support for so much trauma that is coming through their door. Teachers need answers. They don't need more learning opportunities, because those learning opportunities aren't always contextualized or meeting the needs of people. So they also need agency in what learning they need to do. So teachers might be told, you need to build your skills in these areas. This used to happen to me. They'd be like, we're going to do math work this year. Lucky for me, math was an area of focus. And I'm like, yeah, baby, I have tons of growth needed in math. But then when the Right to Read report came out in Ontario and everybody was shifting their literacy practice to a more science-based approach, I was like, I have been marinating in this work. I've been reading this work. You're going to make me start at point A? I'm at point G. I want to start at point G, and there's nobody that's letting me do that. So ultimately, the answer for teachers is agency. They have to have choice in what they learn, how they learn, when they learn, and even how it gets evaluated. That's a longer conversation.
Yeah, I love it. Let's switch over to you music identity. The podcast is something I actually just discovered. I actually didn't know about that. The personal playlist podcast. Yeah. How did you come up with that? That's so cool.
So Stephen Hurley, who started Voice Ed Radio, which was and is, because now it's back, it was purchased, but Voice Ed Radio was a way to get educator voices in one place, really at the very beginning of podcasting. And Stephen had been saying to me, I had been on Ed Mentors and was hosting at the time, and he said, Noah, you have a podcast in you. Like, Stephen, I never knew I was going to be on a podcast, never mind host a podcast. He's like, let's have lunch. So on my way to lunch, I had just said goodbye to my students, and one of my students thanked me for the transformational experience of what was called at the time a personal soundtrack, the PS2, because it was part of a 3-part learning experience. Part 1 was a portrait of yourself, part 2 was a playlist, and then part 3 was it's a longer story, but it's called A Self-Portrait. And sorry, I said that. It was about a photograph. You had to take a photograph that reflected your life. Anyway, in this 3-part experience, a lot of students really resonated with the idea of a nostalgic identity and pick-me-up song. And when Stephen said that, and I was thinking about what my student had said, I said, Stephen, it would be really interesting talking to teachers about a throwback, a song that reflects their identity, and a song that lifts them up, picks them up, or changes their vibe. And he's like, do it. I was like, okay. And so then I went home and I was playing one of my playlists and Sir Duke came on. And I love Stevie Wonder, but I'm like, oh my God, music. Like it's the universal language. Oh my God. And it was like I'd been doing things with music, but I didn't understand that music was a conduit to learning. So not only could I invite these cool people across education and across the world into like this very intimate and oh my gosh, like I can't even explain to you some of the things I learned about people just by unpacking their playlists. I learned about, their grandparents, their first language, the things that really lit them up, the things that really challenged them, and just like super vibey playlists about pick-me-up songs. Some people called them walk-on songs, So I started to like have these anniversaries where I would like create a playlist of everybody's theme song or come back and do things with it. And I was having fun, but I was also getting to model the power of music in the classroom. So I was able to impact so many students by having teachers really, really excited about this. I make the outline for the P3 available for free everywhere. And so I always, with my students, when I do the personal playlist project with them, that's the P3 for them. And then the personal playlist podcast for teachers, I really show that you can get to know somebody and you can use a text critically and you can add dimensions of music and video, etc. And you can critically reflect on what makes something appropriate for the class. Like that conversation, and it's come very close sometimes about how there's no swearing at school. Even with the teachers, they would come with some crazy stuff. And I'm like, I cannot have this playing in the hallways of a school. I'm so sorry. I'm glad it's a song that reflects your identity. I can't have swearing in it. And I don't. And so people were like, what? And I'm like, am I confining them because I can't let them swear? But, that's the parameter. That's the block. This is for something that happens in education. And anyway, it was amazing. And it was so sad when people started clamping down on rights. So I started getting my podcast was being deleted because of all of these copyright infringements of using songs, even though people owned the songs and sent them to me, even though, and there are all these things out there that you can get illegally. And I am a do the right thing person. So I was starting to feel like personally, like painfully hurt when people's episodes were taken off. And I just said to Stephen, I can't do this anymore. Like people have shared the deepest, most intimate stories of the song that came on right before their father died, or the bird that came to tell them that life was going to be okay because this song played. Like music is not only a way in and a way out, it is a language that we can connect with, that brings us to our past, that makes us feel good, that can change our zone. So I can't do this anymore. And Stephen's like, okay, that's your choice. And that's when I got to do the TED Talk about it and getting to at least share it in a TED Talk, which was a bucket list item for me. Another one that really reminded me that I needed to infuse my classroom with music. So not only I had History Beats, which is a great project, a Bob project where students analyze lyrics that are historical and, determine to what degree it was accurate. So there's lots of great music out there, and you can do like Canadian, like in my province, I would do Canadian music, but you can do that anytime. But any way that you can bring music into the classroom experience is a way to bring students into. So I have a playlist that my students make throughout the year. They add to the playlist, and that's their play out song every day. Because I was teaching at the end of the day, be like, okay, random, whose song's coming on? And the kids are like, whose song is it going to be? And then it's their song, and they leave the day feeling as empowered as they felt the whole time in my class. So music is pretty important to my practice.
That's Yeah, that's so awesome. As a musician myself, I love that. Do you play any instruments?
No, I play nothing. I've written songs without knowing any musical like language really, but all three of my daughters play piano. My middle daughter writes songs all the time, and so I feel like I've enabled them in things that I wasn't able to do. Although I do plan on learning something at some point, but it hasn't come to fruition yet.
Music continues into your authorship as well. And
That's true.
yeah,
So I had written two children's books and I hated the experience. I was never going to do it again to have a publisher because as wonderful as publishers can be in getting your word out, it takes away agency when they choose the font, when they choose the layout and how they market it. And it was really hard for me. Both of those books were everywhere and I was never going to do it again. So I was ghostwriting and these guys called me and they're like, Noah, I want you to write this story. And originally their story and the intention of the story was just for people who would come and visit their ranch. And it was supposed to just be funny because he had bought a peacock, had his ranch build him an aviary, and the peacock disappeared. And a year later was found on a trail can leading a pack of wild turkeys. He's like, I want you to write this story. And I happened to be working on my TED Talk. I was like, I can't do it. And I don't often say no to projects, especially music-oriented projects, but it wasn't music-oriented yet. But because my TED Talk was about the P3 and music, I was thinking, and then my TED Talk got moved to the winter and I was like already in this creative thing. So I took a stab at what story I could write that has a peacock leading a pack of wild turkeys. And like any good teacher, I started with research. So I found out, wow, like peacocks had vocalizations, not just like the braying of their plume. So I looked up wild turkeys. I looked up turkeys and then it was saying that wild turkeys, which already was like, oh, that's interesting, wild turkeys. And then each of the sounds are cut, gobble, kiki, and yelp. So I had this idea that wild turkeys would be the band of wild turkeys. And then I started to build this idea of how could, cut and kiki and yelp and the whole idea of these characters really evolve, like to become, even though they were the same breed, they were each unique and individual. And then really Strum's story is so many of our stories, a peacock with an imperfect plume who kind of learns to find his voice and in that invites other people to vibe with him. And that's how he becomes the lead singer of the Wild Turkeys. And the first book, and I still want to believe it's the first book. I've been having many, many conversations about the second book and hopefully the series, but I haven't let go of that because the way students relate to Strum makes me want to make more of these books. Because even though Strum is strumming his plume instead of braying it like other peacocks, he figures it out and he embraces his unique self. And that's when his life changes. And we all have things that make us feel less and we all have a need to belong. So the universality of what was coming out of me, including the transformative power of music, because I got to write a song in the book and then I had it recorded and there's a video and like so many things came from that. And even when I'm sitting somewhere and I see a wild turkey, a story will come to my head and I love these characters. And I've now written 5 or 6 of the stories. And sometimes I try not to, but I write the songs that go with them too. We'll see. If nothing else, it keeps me creative.
Yeah, absolutely. The beautiful thing is an imperfect plume puts Strum in position to be the perfect person to lead the band of wild turkeys. And it's great. And one thing it always touches on in my head when I think about it is a comment Garrett said one time, which is we're trying to embolden children and empower them to believe the world needs exactly who they were made to be. And that's just kind of what your vibes are. Same kind of thing there. I like that a lot.
I think the truth is I struggle with that even now of finding a place to belong. So I create them through the work that I do so that other people always feel like they belong around me and to themselves, which is part of the beauty of the work that I do is that hopefully they feel a deeper sense of self and an acceptance of self and self-belonging as well as part of a larger community.
Yeah, so many good takes. What's on your personal playlist right now?
It's so funny that you asked that because my kids are trying to get me into country music and like I like bluegrass, but country is a little bit different for me. So I'm really, really trying. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now. And my eldest is super into bands. So she'll throw me me a song here and there and just say, listen. So there isn't like anybody in particular, but like real huge respect for like Brandy Carlisle and a whole bunch of really interesting musicians that are synthesizing different sounds into their own thing. So I wish that there was a shout out I could give you, but I can send you a couple playlists if you want to know what I'm listening to. And always like retro 80s is super fun. And so I started bringing a whole bunch of wave music back, and like my kids can sing along with the Smiths, which is super fun for me. So yay.
Yeah. I'm always gonna go for modern, but an old school country feel. Tyler Childers is a good one. And
Okay.
yeah, so check that one out. That's always
I think I've seen Tyler Childers somewhere.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a good
What
one.
else you got?
That's all I got. That's all I got.
Just throw it my way. I'm open to everything.
Oh yeah, I listen to just anything and everything. And then Tedeschi Trucks Band is
I know that
okay.
band. Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, one of the best ever. What's a lesson that you're still learning? Because you were talking about one of your favorite parts about being at the mentoree is not just the mentorship, but being a mentee. What's one of those lessons that you're still learning as a mentee?
I think what you just said about who you are is exactly what needs to be. I am learning to stop apologizing. I know it's hard to tell. I'm like super excited all the time. And I often, even in a staff meeting, will be like, I'm so sorry, but I just need to say this, or I'm so sorry. And I often will find myself doubting my own contributions to things because I'm so excited. And I'm really trying to just be me without questioning it unapologetically and really walk the talk. So, some days are easier than others, but I really am working on that.
Yeah, I think that's what we all share that hurdle that we have to get across. What's keeping you up at night right now in education? What's the big thing that we have to address?
Hate is keeping me up at night. I think, as somebody who embraced DEI from the beginning, somebody who unlearned a lot of things that were systematic, I cannot believe, like as a Jewish woman, what I am seeing in schools and how educators are teaching hate. It is driving me insane, and it's hurting so many people. So I think that all hate, when we want to stamp out all hate, it should mean everybody. So I don't think there's an exception to that. I think if we want to build inclusive spaces, we need to accept that they include all human beings.
Yeah. There's no, if it lumps people into groups, it's divisive. And I'm not for it. If it puts people into one giant group that's, human beings, then it's all for it. I love it. What's the thing that made you feel most hopeful recently? What's the big hopeful moment you've had, or big win recently?
I have so many hopeful moments. So give me some more context.
Well, just like what's the big Noa Daniel win that you're sailing on right now?
I think it's that really everything is possible and that you create your own reality. So that's a win for me in terms of I'm trying to build on my ability to make a wider impact. And I think I can do that.
I love it. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Any plugs you want to make?
I think I've plugged enough, but I'm always happy to have a conversation.
I'm curious to go back and watch that.
When you disappeared and I just started talking, I think I could do that for pretty much all day, every day. And I think I really miss that about hosting a podcast. Like my show on Ed Mentors is going to shift to the Mentoree podcast, but it's not coming back out until January. And really taking it slow, not having a live show is going to be challenging because I love the rush of live. So really thinking about what that's going to look like, whose voices are going to be centered, how am I going to ensure everybody's voices are heard and represented. That's exciting on the horizon and something I'll talk about later, hopefully with you.
Thank you for coming on. Been a big joy. I'll connect everything in the description where people can find the Bob projects, info about the Mentoree, get a copy of Strum and the Wild Turkeys, playlist podcast. I love the alliteration, but it's so hard to say.
I love to name my projects, just so you know, like that's part of the process for me.
Yeah, same. Sometimes I create a project just because the name I had is so good, and I'm like, well, now I gotta bring it to life, right?
I'm going to play with that idea. I love that.
I appreciate having you on, and everybody keep learning, keep thinkering, and until next time.
Love the term thinkering, and we'll definitely use it in my classroom. The kids will love it. This is where we can be that peer support network with each other. When the big picture clicks, it's beautiful when you get administrators and teachers together.
You can't be a leader of other people if you can't first lead yourself, right?
Helps the educator have a very clear and structured framework.
Becomes this real community hub. If you're a great educator, you're looking for the most powerful moment. Can we inspire kids to believe that the world needs who they were made to be?
I hope you guys continue to uphold that legacy and continue, finding kids like you.